Let's grow together. And now our message for today, things that go bump in the night.
Once again, we find ourselves in spooky season, and whenever that time of year rolls around, I'm always reminded of an old Scottish traditional prayer. From ghoulies and ghosties and long-leggedy beasties and things that go bump in the night, good Lord, deliver us. Well, this week we'll encounter ghosts, witches, vampires, and other scary things. Halloween is a time of fun fear, when we can safely laugh at things that might otherwise terrify us. A time to eat, drink, and be scary. According to the National Retail Foundation, Americans will spend over $9 billion on costumes, decorations, and candy. Why do we love Halloween so much? Well, fear can be fun when we know it's not real and we feel safe. When we're frightened, we get a natural high from the hormones and neurotransmitters released, including dopamine, the same neurotransmitter that controls the pleasure centers of the brain. Fright stimulates the sympathetic nervous system and floods the body with fight or flight chemicals. But because we know that our fear has been caused by a fictitious threat, we experience it as pleasurable. Of course, we encounter very real fears all year, and these fears are a bit harder to laugh at. Fear can be uncomfortable or even crippling, but eliminating it altogether would be the equivalent of shutting down your home alarm system, because it sometimes makes weird or irritating sounds. Now, being fearless does not mean eliminating fear. Being fearless means learning how to leverage fear. And to do that, you need to know a few things about what you're dealing with. In the first place, fear can be healthy. Not all fears are bad. For example, fear of heights is a good thing if it motivates us to be careful when we're on a tall ladder. Fear of snakes is probably a good thing too, because we live in Florida, the poisonous snake capital of North America. They don't tell you that in the tourist brochures. Now, for years we were told that we were born with two natural fears, the fear of falling and the fear of loud noises. And all other fears were thought to be learned. But new research indicates that we don't learn to be terrified of spiders and snakes. We were hardwired millions of years ago to fear them. In one experiment, experts measured the baby's they tested 6-month-old babies for their reactions to photos of flowers and fish versus snakes and spiders. And experts evaluated their anxiety by analyzing how their pupils dilated. Dilated pupils is a sign that they were stressed out by the images. And when they showed pictures of a snake or a spider to the babies, instead of a flower or fish of the same size and color, they reacted with significantly bigger pupils. Well, regardless of what frightens us, the capacity for fear is hardwired in your brain. Feeling fear is neither abnormal nor a sign of weakness. In fact, a lack of fear may be a sign of serious brain damage. So let's say that we're born with 3 fears: fear of falling, fear of loud noises, and fear of spiders and snakes. What about the rest of our fears? Well, a study was conducted on 500 adults of various ages and backgrounds and lifestyles, and the study showed that collectively, as a group, they had about 7,000 different fears. Now subtract the 3 inborn fears, And that means they must have learned 6,997 fears since they were born. That's a lot of fears. And yes, we do learn them. The psychologist Carl Menninger said, fears are educated into us and can, if we wish, be educated out. So, while fear can be healthy, most of our fears are not helpful. They limit our experience of life and impair our ability to achieve success, experience joy, or have loving relationships. Fear is perhaps the most powerful paralyzing agent known, far more capable of producing paralysis than snake venom or a stroke. Fear comes in many varieties. Fear can range from mild to paralyzing, from anticipating the results of a medical checkup to hearing that you're in the direct path of a hurricane. Horrifying events can leave a permanent mark on your brain circuitry, which may require professional help. And chronic stress, the low-intensity variety of fear expressed as free-floating anxiety, constant worry, and daily insecurity, can quietly but seriously harm your physical and mental health over time. Fear can literally make you sick. In extreme cases, it can kill you. You really can be scared to death. And you don't need to be in actual danger to be scared. Fear is a function of the imagination, so it can arise even in the absence of an actual threat. We get scared because of what we imagine could happen. And therefore, some scientists claim that humans are the most fearful creatures on the planet because of our ability to create fear in our minds. The more scared you feel, the scarier things will seem. Right about now, you're probably saying, well, duh. But scientists have come up with a complicated name for an obvious phenomenon. They call it potentiation. And this is where your fear is amplified if you're already in a state of fear. When you're primed with fear, even harmless events can seem scary. So, for example, if you're watching a documentary about venomous spiders, a tickle on your neck caused by a loose thread in your sweater may startle you and make you jump out of your seat. If you're already afraid of flying, the slightest turbulence may push your blood pressure through the roof. And the more worried you are about your job security, the more you'll sweat it when the boss calls you in for a meeting. But by far, our greatest fear is fear of the unknown. When you encounter an unfamiliar situation, this fear of the unknown may manifest itself and prevent you from making right decisions and, more importantly, taking right actions. Frequently, you choose to run away from the situation, and in the process, you miss out on a lot of opportunities in life. More about this in a moment. But for now, let's identify all those unknowns as ghosts and our fears about them as hauntings. Lloyd Douglas said, if a man harbors any sort of fear, it makes him landlord to a ghost. Are you playing host to a ghost? Are spooks living rent-free in your very own haunted mansion? If so, you'll suffer the consequences. Fear causes stagnation when we're too afraid to move. Fear causes chaos when it makes us move. Fear is the parent of anger, jealousy, hatred, and greed. Fear creates the illusion of separation. And fear causes devastation because when we're living from fear, we cannot act from love. Fear keeps you from becoming all you're meant to be. It limits your potential. It can devastate your life. But you are not made to suffer through a life overwhelmed with fears. So, what can you do about fear? How can you overcome it? Some fears diminish with time. When you were 5, the boogeyman made your heart race, made you turn pale, made your knees knock, and upset your stomach. You were terrified of things that weren't there. It's like that little bit of verse by Ogden Nash. Yesterday beneath the stair, I saw a man who wasn't there. He wasn't there again today. I wish that man would go away. Well, the boogeyman can't hurt you now because you don't believe in him. Nothing changed but your belief. The only life the boogeyman ever had came from you. And so we can learn to outgrow our fears, regardless of our age. Any situation or condition can be changed into something else by changing your mind. Change your thinking, change your life. And with enough work, you can even make the man under the stairs disappear. Although that isn't necessary, all you really need to do is ignore him. In England, there's a little pub, and carved into the mantel over the fireplace is this: fear knocked at the door. Faith answered. No one was there. We need not be afraid of fear. We need not be ashamed of fear, but we do need to put on our big boy or big girl pants and deal with it. There will always be something that will cause us to feel fear, but there will always be something positive that we can do about it. In a wonderful book called How to Use the Science of Mind by Ernest Holmes, we find a practitioner of spiritual mind healing is continually confronted with the fog of fear, superstition, and doubt. Otherwise, there would be no reason for his practice. For the most part, there's no need for lengthy therapy or complicated techniques to conquer an irrational fear. There are some simple things that we can do right now to put those harmful fears in their place. Rewire your brain. Rewiring your brain is one of the surest ways to overcome your fears and develop the courage that is needed to get you to where you want to go. Develop affirmations that build you up and increase your self-confidence. Read uplifting books to interrupt the negative inner dialogue that goes on in your mind. As children, we're told things that we can't do, can't be, or can't have. And this continues throughout our lives. So we go from being too young to being too old. And along the way, the excuses never stop. If you don't take the initiative to rewire your brain, the world will do it for you. Another idea: value courage over serenity and security. Most people value security over just about everything else in their lives. People will put up with jobs they hate, marriages that make them miserable, and habits that are killing them, simply to feel more secure. But to conquer fear, you must consciously get rid of security as the thing you value most and replace it with the active virtue of courage. You must decide once and for all that it's more important for you to have the courage to do what you must to succeed rather than to cling to the things that make you feel safe. In the words of Eleanor Roosevelt, do one thing every day that scares you. She was talking about leaving your comfort zones. They're those cozy places most of us live in every day where stress and risk are minimized by a steady level of comfort. But that's not going to get you anywhere. Science has proven that doing something that scares you prepares you for new and unexpected changes, helps you push your boundaries in the future, and makes it easier to harness your creativity. In the words of Ralph Waldo Emerson, always do what you're afraid to do. Do the thing you fear, and the death of fear is certain. A short story. Once upon a time, there was a convicted criminal who was sent to the king for sentencing. The king told him he had a choice of two punishments. He could be hung to death, or he could take what's behind a big, dark, iron door. The criminal quickly chose the rope, and as the noose was being slipped on him, he turned to the king and asked, "By the way, out of curiosity, what's behind the door?" The king laughed and said, "You know, it's funny. I offer everyone the same choice, and nearly everyone picks the rope." "But," said the criminal, "what's behind the door? I mean, obviously, I won't tell anyone," he said, pointing to the noose around his neck. And the king answered, "Behind that door is freedom. But it seems that most are so afraid of the unknown that they immediately take the rope." Well, if you want to be free of fear's deadly effects, you must confront fear and face it down. If you decide to conquer small fears or challenges on a regular basis, you'll build up your self-confidence, which will help you conquer bigger fears. And if you're having a particularly boring day, mastering something that scares you can be an exhilarating experience. So treat fear as a call to action. If what you fear is outside of your control, for example, an economic downturn or a recession, write down the exact steps you'll take to deal with it if it happens. And once you've completed that task, put the plan aside and forget about it unless it's needed. You've done what you can, move on. But if what you fear is under your control, but there's some action that you've been afraid to take a few moments and prepare yourself, and then do the thing that scares you. The key here is to do it now. Not tomorrow, not next week, right now before you give your fear time to grow. Fear thrives and flourishes on inaction. Call that person, write to that email, apply for that job, create that business plan, and do it now. And very important, but something we tend to overlook in the face of fear, turn to love. Jesus said that perfect love casts out all fear. Well, what on earth does that mean? Well, let's turn the phrase inside out. Where there is fear, there cannot be love. To realize God as love is the remedy for fear. For when you realize, that is, make real, God's love, most of your difficulties will disappear because they were rooted in fear. Love is creative. Fear is destructive. There's no separation in love. In love, all is one. And when all is one, there is no tension, no antagonism, no struggle, and therefore no fear. The Hindu scriptures tell us, he who sees all beings in his own self, and his own self in all beings, loses all fear. If you think about it, love always involves trust. And when we're conscious of the love of God, we know we can place our trust in God. And that's what faith really means. Love plus trust equals faith. But negative thought charged with fear equals trouble. When trouble of any kind comes into our lives, it's because we've allowed our consciousness to fall to the level where fear and limitation can take charge. Writing in the Science of Mind textbook, Ernest Holmes says, "Someone has said that the entire world is suffering from one big fear, the fear that God will not answer our prayers. The fear of lack is nothing more than the belief that God does not and will not supply us with whatever we need. The fear of death is the belief that the promises of eternal life may not be true. The fear of loss of health, loss of friends, loss of property, all arise from the belief that God is not all we claim, all-knowing, all-powerful, everywhere present. But what is fear? Nothing more or less than the negative use of faith. Faith misplaced, a belief in two powers instead of one, a belief that there can be a power opposed to God whose influence and ability may bring us evil. So, in other words, to correct all the evils of the world would be but to have positive faith, faith rightly placed, a faith that lays hold of the integrity of the universe, the beneficence of God, and the unity of all life. Well, in the spirit of granting equal time to different viewpoints, I've spent the past few minutes trash talking fear. So it seems only fair that I give fear some time to speak for itself. I am fear. I am the menace that lurks in the path of life, never visible to the eye, but sharply felt in the heart. I am the father of despair, the brother of procrastination, the enemy of progress, the tool of tyranny. Born of ignorance and nursed on misguided thought, I have darkened more hopes, stifled more ambitions, shattered more ideals, and prevented more accomplishments than history could ever record. I assume many disguises. I masquerade as caution. I'm sometimes known as doubt or worry. But whatever I'm called, I am still fear, the obstacle of achievement. I know no master but one. Its name is understanding. I have no power but that which the human mind gives me. And I vanish completely when the light of understanding reveals the facts as they really are. For I am really nothing. If you have the courage to acknowledge your fears, you will be taking the first step toward controlling them, instead of them controlling you. And if you take your next step toward understanding, you'll be able to move past them to compassion and perhaps even love. Just as we experience fun fear at Halloween, we really can experience the exhilaration of facing down our fears. It's the ultimate thrill ride. I'd like to leave you with a concise bit of wisdom from Ernest Holmes' brother, Fenwick. Fenwick Holmes started his career as a Congregationalist minister and ended up as a Science of Mind minister and collaborator with his brother Ernest. He wrote, "I know no fear and no regret. Whatever comes, I'm bigger yet." And years later, he added, "I'm greater far than the fears I fought. I told them to get, and they have got." Happy Halloween. Somebody asked me last week after the service, what does it mean to go into the silence? And I ran across this interesting piece this week which answers that important question. Silence isn't the absence of anything. It's the presence of all that is. It's not the absence of sound, but the presence of everything your soul has been waiting for you to hear. In the stillness of silence, our inner wisdom speaks, healing flows forth, and divine guidance gently awakens. When you embrace silence, you're not turning away from the world, you're turning in to your truth. So right now, I invite you to get very comfortable in your seat. Just relax. Relax into the stillness. Take a deep breath. Let it go. Take another one. Close your eyes, shut out any distractions, and let's spend these next few moments listening to the words of our founder, Ernest Holmes. I lay all fear aside, and in confidence and complete faith, I turn to the one perfect divine presence, knowing that the light of truth shines upon my path, even as divine love guides me into the secret place of the Most High, where I dwell under the shadow of the Almighty. I know there is nothing to be afraid of in God's world. Fear cannot operate in me, nor can it go forth from me. At the very center of my being, there is complete confidence, complete faith. At the very center of my being, there is a consciousness of the protection of divine love, the guidance of divine wisdom, and the strength of divine power. And so I turn in thought to the whole world and know that my word is bringing light and life and a feeling of strength and confidence to everyone. I turn in thought to the great creative imagination of the human race and assure it that there is a feeling and a presence at the center of everything, waiting to make itself known. And I turn to the great God who knows all things and who can do all things. And I say, lead, kindly light, amid the encircling gloom. Lead me on. And so it is.